everyone needs a place to start, right?
About 10 years ago, I had spent almost a decade in higher education.
There's a pathway in the door and there's a pathway up to the top.
If you don't know humans, you don't know business.
Good morning, Jessica. Thanks so much for joining. Welcome to Talent Talk. I'm Becca O'Toole, your host for today, and I am joined by the CHRO of Kimball Electronics, Jessica DeLorenzo. Jessica, do you want to introduce yourself and say a quick hello?
Yeah, good morning. So hello, everyone. Yeah, thanks, Becca, for the invitation. It feels like I'm coming home. I grew up in radio, so to be like in front of the mic again, it feels good.
I love that. I didn't even know that about you. That's amazing. I'm really excited for our conversation today. You and I had a quick opportunity to connect earlier, and you were telling me a lot about your career journey and, some of the things that kind of shaped who you are today, the role you're in today, and of course, a lot along the way. So I wanted to just jump right in and talk a little bit about a very significant career shift that you made, about 8-10 years ago? Is that correct?
Yeah, my 10-year anniversary was about a month ago. So,
oh my gosh. Okay. So 10 years ago, you made a pretty significant career shift from the higher ed world into leading a global HR function in manufacturing. So tell me a little bit about what inspired that transition and what were some of the most surprising challenges you found jumping from education into advanced manufacturing.
Yeah, about 10 years ago, I had spent almost a decade in higher education, and the transition was the combination of luck and timing and hard work and sort of my own desire to want to do more and want to be more. And I had sort of hit a plateau where I was in higher ed and thought, well, what's the real world like, right? So at that time, Kimball Electronics was spinning off of its parent company, Kimball International, and they were building out their corporate sort of infrastructure as it's a new public company. And one of the roles that they posted was an organizational development role. And at that time, I saw the job description and I read it and I thought, if I could write my own job description, this is it. So, oh my gosh, it was exactly what I wanted to do and exactly what I knew I was good at. So I applied, I interviewed, and I was invited to join the organization. I did not know at that time that I had boarded a rocket ship, both for my own personal development and growth and the company's sort of growth as this new public entity. So it was just the timing of the spin of Kimball Electronics, my own desire to do more, and so a lot of the hard work along the way, who in my network and how can I leverage my network to get a look at, since I didn't come from the industry. So why were they even going to consider me? So yeah, that came with some significant, challenges and opportunities. One of the most significant challenges I encountered was this idea of corporate governance. It was a realm I did not even know existed.
Different, more difficult than higher ed, are you saying?
Yeah. I mean, you have like a board of trustees and you have your administration and faculty and all of that stuff. But, a board of directors with independent directors and, and external shareholders, and how you talk to those audiences and how you're transparent and to a point and, just the right amount and disclosure and sort of protecting all those two important stakeholders, all balancing the rest. But just this idea of corporate governance really has turned into a laboratory of everything I learned in college, like psychology and sociology and how do you motivate and how do you communicate and how do you collaborate. And so it still is a challenge, but the learning curve was pretty steep right off the bat.
I love that. And you bring up a really great point. I think, you obviously did a really nice job of recognizing internally that you had a lot of transferable skills that went from kind of your previous world in education into this space. I know you specifically, and then Kimball also, you guys do a lot in terms of helping maybe younger or newer staff entering the manufacturing space recognize and leverage their own transferable skills. How do you kind of help coach someone through that process when they're considering a career change?
Yeah, I think when individuals are considering a career change, a couple of things are true, right? It's scary and it's exciting at the same time. But I regularly talk to graduate students who are they're in a graduate program because they are likely considering a career pivot. And my advice to them in terms of identifying transferable skills is really break it down to what's the simplest pieces of the work that you do. Forget the company, forget the industry. What is it that you do at its core? As humans, we're just so attached to our job description. I do this for these customers at this company and this industry. But if you can break that down, it becomes really transferable. So for example, I was talking to an MBA student who works in higher education. And she was telling me what she did on a daily basis. And what she did was she takes student appeals and she looks at university policies and procedures. And she says, she makes the decision. Does the appeal match procedures and policies? Yes. Approve the appeal. Okay. Deny the appeal. And here are opportunities for continuous improvement. And she was having a really hard time connecting that to business. How would I do that in business? There are no students, there are no universities. What does that mean? And I got really excited because I was like, this is exactly what quality auditors do in the manufacturing environment. If you break it down, you have an output, you have a process, you have a list of established procedures or rules, and you match those up. If they match, great. If no, what's the continuous improvement to make it better and pass next time? It was just really cool seeing the light bulb go off for her. Like, oh, like if you just break it down to that simple thing, you can really start to talk about your own value proposition.
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting point too. Even thinking about a job description, right? Sometimes as HR leaders, we can get kind of lofty in our language, if you will, of, what a different job could look like, what function you're going to be serving. But when it comes down to it, really, what are the root skills that someone needs to be successful, right? When you can kind of break it down to that level, I think then you open up the aperture for who would be excited about that position, who feels like they are skilled enough to enter that workforce.
Exactly.
I love that. Tell me a little bit about how you are cultivating new talent at Kimball, especially among early career professionals or those entering the manufacturing space.
Yeah, so at Kimball, we are really intentional about reaching deeper into the talent pipeline. So it is not unusual for us to be in elementary classrooms, in middle school classrooms, and definitely in high school classrooms, in just sort of exposing in the students to the world of manufacturing. I remember when I was in high school and I took like the career day tour at a local manufacturer, and I was like, there is no way that I'm going to work in manufacturing. Like, I'm just not interested in this. So I really challenge our local teams to establish those relationships with not only the higher ed institutions in the region or the state or whatever, but in your local communities, because you are a stakeholder in that community and they are your stakeholders. So how you sort of pull back the curtain and say, this is what manufacturing is. This isn't, your grandfather or grandmother's manufacturing. This is just a whole new world of work, and it's really cool. And how can you help us get to that next stage? So our internship programs at the college level are really, really strong in all of our locations. The internship in our Poland plant is really highly regarded in the local area. It's like the premier internship opportunity in that region. So they've worked on that over time, and it's through meaningful experiences to those college interns, and it's real work. In Mexico, we invite a group of high school students in to solve real problems on the manufacturing floor, and then they present then to the management team to say that here's your solution. And it's so cool because the light bulbs go off in management of, oh, huh, so it's a really cool thing to see in terms of reducing the barriers that create fear of the unknown of what manufacturing is.
I think internship is such a great place to start on this. I think oftentimes, I've experienced anyways, a little bit of trepidation from operations leaders on programs like early career internships, pre-apprenticeships, things like that, where, you're taking a bit of a risk, right, on a newer employee, and you guys have to show up in the best way possible also. Um, it sounds like you've been able to really create great buy-in from the leaders that are actually going to be working hand in hand, arm in arm with these new interns. Are there any strategies that your team implemented to create more buy-in at those levels? Especially understanding that there's going to be a little bit more of a transition, but the long-term strategy is really going to pay big dividends for your organization.
Yeah, we use a lot of, we call it science. We get a little pushback from the operations teams that this isn't science, there's no math. But we call it sort of behavioral science in determining the abilities of people that we bring into manufacturing from, especially from other career fields or other industries, and making sure that the leaders have eyes wide open and partner with them on who they're bringing into the organization and who they're considering to bring into the organization. So we use a tool called the predictive index, which gives us a sort of a gauge on behavioral tendencies and cognitive agility. And the conversation we have with managers and leaders in our manufacturing plants to continue that buy-in is, this isn't a go, no go. It's absolutely not a go, no go on a hire or a promotion. It's just another piece of information to fill in the gaps to understand the whole person. So, I recently came across this idea of the pay your dues paradox. And it's this idea that leaders, and I see this all the time in manufacturing, they believe that people new to the business or haven't been exposed to it before or don't, have never worked in manufacturing, that they have to have the experiences that they had to earn, to deserve a position in manufacturing. It's sort of, you don't have to suffer in manufacturing like I did for you to deserve it. But the paradox to that is, but manufacturing is eager and desires and is so hungry for fresh air and new ideas and innovation. And how do you get that? Through diverse experiences, right? So it's sort of it's the conversation and the trade-offs of, I hear you, and there's a lot more. Now, I will say, in our particular company, the customer-facing organization legitimately needs industry experience. I mean, it is really hard to put someone who hasn't worked in the industry in front of a decision maker and a customer at that table and be able to speak the language and convince and be able to, partner with our package of value, talk about our package of value. So there are exceptions, but I think this idea of manufacturing is so different. You have to have this experience is just so limiting to the human potential. So we're just capable of so much more.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think there should be a pathway, right? There should be roles that are much more skilled that you have to work towards through different educational pathways, through on-the-job training, through world experiences and lived experiences. But everyone needs a place to start, right? And so how do we open the gates, wide open for those high potential employees to not only recognize that Kimball is an amazing employer, an employer of choice, but there's a pathway in the door and there's a pathway up to the top, right? And I love that. And I think you've even demonstrated that with your own experience. They're coming in the L&D space and now making it to be the global leader of HR, which I think is really amazing.
It's humbling when I look back on it, but it's the support systems that we have at Kimball that really, have allowed me to be the best version of myself. And I hope we can provide that scaffolding and that structure and that support for others to, once they get their foot in the door, then let's help them. Where do you want to go? And how can I help you get there?
Absolutely. I love that. Well, I think that is a great note to ask my final question on then. So as we're thinking about kind of your hard-earned experiences and your learnings here, what advice do you have for other manufacturing leaders to help create pathways for career changers or people looking to enter and be successful for the long term in manufacturing?
Yeah, I think my advice to leaders in manufacturing is just be humble and self-aware, right? Somebody gave you a chance. If you're hiring the right people with the right skill sets, the right mindsets, you can teach them anything, right? If they are motivated to change a career, then help them do that. Somebody helped you, and it's that humility and that self-awareness. Manufacturing it's an industry of human beings. And, there's this idea that, or this saying that if you don't know humans, you don't know business. So, I think that's my advice is a lot of humility can go a long way in increasing the value of somebody's life.
I love that. Wonderful. Jessica, thank you so much for your time this morning. I loved hearing a little bit about the work that you're doing and the transformation you've gone through. Really exciting stuff. Thank you again.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Becca.